Okay, good morning, everyone. Today we're reading chapter 14, and the title of that chapter is The Rights of a Human. Okay. The house had a deserted look. No one would guess a runaway slave was hiding inside. Laura reflected as the sheriff dropped them off at the end of the drive. As soon as they had closed the door behind them, Bert called out, "Martin, we're back! It's Bert and Laura!" There was no answer. At once the thought flashed through Laura's mind. He's gone. The slave catchers came while we were away and found him. Bert took the stairs two at a time, shouting, "Martin, you hear me?" Laura lifted her long skirts and hurried after him. As she approached her room, she heard Martin's now familiar voice, slightly muffled. "I'm here, Mr. Bert. Soon's I heard someone come on the porch, I ducked down into the little hole. I thought it was you, but I didn't dare take a chance." When Laura reached her room, Martin had pushed aside the carpet and was crawling out of the secret room. "I'm glad to see you," she exclaimed. "They caught a runaway in the church, and for a while we were afraid it was you." Martin's eyes widened. "He got away," Laura assured him. "I think he must have been George, the slave who was hiding at Joel's house." "Did anyone come here?" asked Bert. "Nope, but every time I heard a noise, I jumped back in this hole." Martin turned to Bert. "Where's your carriage? I didn't hear it come in." Bert explained how their carriage had been taken. "So now we have to figure out another way to get you to the river tonight." In the excitement, Laura hadn't thought of this. "Bert, you can take him through town on foot. We'll go through the woods." Laura said firmly, "You'd never be able to find your way at night. You'll just have to wait till Pa gets home." Bert set his jaw stubbornly. "Don't try to tell me what to do. A boat's coming to pick Martin up at midnight, and I'm going to have him there to meet it. If we don't get there tonight, the plans have to be made all over again. How do you think we can keep him hidden? Uncle Daniel will be here by morning." Laura recognized her mistake. It was no use telling Bert what to do. "All right," she said. "You figure it out." "Where are you going to take me?" Martin asked nervously. Laura said, "You tell him about Tyrant's Folly, Bert. I'm going down and I'll get some supper for us." By 6:30, supper was finished and the dishes were washed. The evening stretched ahead endlessly. Laura accompanied Bert when he went out to feed the chickens. She stared anxiously at the sky, hoping to find clouds that would provide an early cover of darkness, but the entire sky was clear. The quarter moon looked ready and able to light up the land for hours. Bert noticed his sister looking at the sky. "Don't get your hopes up," he said. "The moon doesn't set until 10:30 tonight. I looked at the almanac to be sure. I don't dare take Martin out until after it goes down. Even if it isn't a full moon, it gives more light than I want tonight." All three gathered in Laura's room to be near Martin's hiding place. Bert closed the inside shutters so any watchful eyes would be unable to see the three figures walking about where there should only have been two. Martin seated himself on the floor beside the lamp table to read a well-worn paper Bert had given him. Laura noticed the masthead, Frederick Douglass's paper. "What's that?" she asked. "It's an abolitionist paper," Bert answered. "You know, against slavery. It used to be called the North Star because slaves followed the North Star to freedom. It's put out by a man who used to be a slave, Frederick Douglass." Laura stared at him. "You mean the editor is a black man?" Bert smiled. "He is. And what's more, I've seen him." Martin looked up with an awed expression. "You've seen Mr. Douglass?" "I stood as close to him as I am to you right now. He came to Lockport to give a talk. He's handsome, big, with a of hair like a lion." Laura was stunned. In the South, even the suggestion that a black man could write and run a newspaper would be unthinkable. "Let me see that for a second, Martin." Bert held out his hand for the paper. He studied it until he found what he wanted. "Here it is. Pa showed this to me. He says that in a few words, this tells the whole story of what he believes in. Listen." Bert read aloud. "I know of no rights of race superior to the rights of humanity." "Did Frederick Douglass write that?" Laura asked. Bert nodded. Laura thought for a moment. It's true, isn't it? She exclaimed. A person should have the rights of a human being no matter what color he is. That's the meaning, isn't it? I think so, said Bert. Or maybe that being white doesn't give us the right to take away a black person's human rights. Only what are the rights of a human being? Laura asked thoughtfully. To be free, said Martin. And to be treated with respect, Laura added. Bert suggested life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, as the Declaration of Independence says. Have I been asleep for 4 years? Laura wondered. She asked herself why she hadn't thought about such things before. Uncle Jim and Aunt Ruth and their friends seemed to think it was natural and right that blacks should be slaves, and she had accepted their attitude without questioning it. The clock on the stairs boomed 7 times, more than 3 hours before Bert and Martin could leave. Maybe you two should get some rest, Laura suggested. I'll stay on watch. I couldn't sleep, said Bert. How about you, Martin? I won't sleep again until I'm across the river, he grinned. I'll sleep in the promised land. Bert paced back and forth. I'll be glad when you're there. He went to the front window, lifted a slat in one of the shutters, and peered out. I wonder if Joel will be able to get away. If he thought he could come, he wouldn't have sent that note, Laura snapped. Stop pacing around. Can't you find something to do? Bert stared at her. What's the matter? You don't have anything to worry about. I'm the one who has to get Martin to the river. A mischievous gleam came into his eyes and he bolted from the room. When he came back, he had a book in his hand. Martin and I can keep busy. We'll take turns reading out loud. Martin looked pleased. I'd like that. Bert sat on the floor near Martin and opened the book. Uncle Tom's Cabin, he read, by Harriet Beecher Stowe. Laura felt angry and hurt. She had changed many of her ideas that day, but she still wasn't ready to accept Uncle Tom's Cabin. Uncle Jim had said it was a pack of lies. I told you I didn't want to see that book, she exclaimed. Don't look then. Bert held the book higher to catch the light of the page. Martin was lying on his back, a rapt expression on his face. I always did want to read Uncle Tom's Cabin. Laura went into the hall. She'd go down to the kitchen and sit. She could find something to read too. Behind her, Bert's voice went on with the reading. She looked back at the room where the lamp spread a pool of light on the carpet. It was in marked contrast to the dark hall. There was companionship, at least in that room. She sighed and went back, taking up her sewing. She sat down in her rocker. Bert said teasingly, Thought you were going to leave us. Laura wrinkled her nose at him. I might as well hear the foolish thing. When Bert, tired of reading, Martin took over. Despite herself, Laura became so lost in the story that she forgot to move her needle. Can it be true slaves are treated like that? She asked herself. Then she remembered Martin's scars and things she hadn't paid attention to when she was living with her aunt and uncle. Frightened, black faces, hurried whispers. Now Martin had reached the part where Uncle Tom was sold down south. That almost happened to my pappy, he explained. Master was going to sell him and we'd never see him again. Only my pappy isn't like Uncle Tom. He wouldn't let our family be split, so we all ran away. So it did happen like that. When she thought about it, Laura remembered how the owner of a plantation near Uncle Jim's had sold a man and woman down south. He kept their children and had one of the older slaves take them in. Martin was an uneven reader, often had to stop and ask Bert how to pronounce a word. Laura finally became impatient. Here, let me read for a while, she said, pulled her chair close to the lamp table. The clock chimed and Laura stopped reading to count the strokes. 9 o'clock. She was amazed. The time was going much faster, almost too fast. She read on. 15 or 20 minutes later, Martin jumped up from the floor and whispered excitedly, Somebody's coming. Laura closed the book, keeping the place with her finger. In the silence, she heard voices outside. Footfalls sounded on the front steps. She knew at once it wasn't Pa and Abby and Uncle Daniel. It was too soon for them, and besides, They would come to the back door. Laura felt her heart leap with fear. Who could be coming at this hour of the night? All right, that was chapter 14. Don't forget Google Forms today. Okay, have a great day, guys.